Hey everyone. I'm not sure if this counts as a let's not meet, but I have a good cautionary tale that will raise some hairs. I'm a 20-year-old female, but this happened 2 years ago when I was still in high school as a senior. I always knew the dark web existed. I just didn't have any particular interest in it until my friend used it at her cousin's house, came back with a bunch of wild stories. Well, some of them were just a little too crazy, so I decided to check it out for myself. I had a little trouble downloading Tor, but it's almost scary how easy everything was after that. There's quite literally nothing off limits. If you can imagine it, someone's uploading videos of it. If a terrible accident is caught on film, it gets uploaded to YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, everywhere. But the clips are cut or blurred to avoid showing anything really gruesome. Not on the dark web. They don't have trigger warnings or content advisories. Whether or not you see someone's head being removed is based solely on you. The safety nets are gone. I don't want to say the actual website, partly because of what happened when I spoke to police, and partly to prevent anyone else from enduring what I went through. But imagine if YouTube didn't have any restrictions. People post whatever they want, and nobody can regulate their content. Let me tell you, there's some sick shit out there. At first, I clicked some pretty off-the-wall titles, assuming that they had to be clickbait, like burn down my ex-boss's house, fuck you, Debbie. But no, they're real. That one showed a man literally breaking into a home and burning it down. He piled obstacles in the hallway so that it would be harder for the woman to escape. Then, he poured gasoline all around the front door, leading back through the house and out the rear door. The whole time, there's a voiceover describing how the woman had fired him on his birthday, so he waited for her birthday to fire her, and about how the company will never be able to replace him. You know, the typical narcissistic rant. So, if it wasn't clickbait, it had to be staged, right? Nope. I Googled the woman's name, and I read all about how the ex-employee had burned her house down. Thank God she survived. And the man, he was caught the next day. No way I could stand watching any of the assault videos, but they were by far the most common. It was so bad that I tried reporting it to the police, but they already knew about the site, which is painfully obvious now. If an 18-year-old found it in 5 minutes, no shit the actual authorities knew about it. I was just so shocked. That experience satisfied all of my curiosity about the dark web and more. I was perfectly happy to delete Tor and never think about it again. But later that night, a Skype message appeared while I was doing my homework. "Why did you call the police?" My heart stopped. I'd been way too embarrassed to tell anyone about the call. I blocked the account, but another one popped up immediately after, and it said my mom's phone number followed by, should I talk to her instead? I asked who they were, what they wanted, to which they said, to make my customers happy. After a short pause, they added, "How can I do that if you're trying to involve the police?" Even now, I'm not sure which site or video belonged to that guy. I tried to tell him that I already deleted the browser, but he didn't believe me. He knew I deleted the desktop icon and not the program. Yes, I'm an idiot who didn't understand the difference, but that's not the point. The point is he knew. It turns out the guy knew a lot more because he had access to my computer. Once I realized the webcam was on, I panicked and held down the power button until it shut off. Afterwards, I talked to Hannah's cousin and learned that the website I used to view the videos was less like YouTube and more like LimeWire. I wasn't streaming. I was downloading those videos, along with God knows what else, and it let someone into my computer. Now, while that does suck really bad, there was a bright side. All I had to do was keep the computer off until I could afford to have it fixed, right? A few days later, the asshole texted me a picture of myself getting dressed, right after a shower. It was taken with my webcam and captioned, "Miss you." I cried for a long time over that one. I still can't stand to think about all the places those videos must exist. How many screen grabs have been created from the footage? I've tortured myself trying to remember what all I may have done in front of that camera, but there's no point in obsessing over what can't be changed. I blocked the number and all of those ones that came after it. Each one was a bit more threatening than the last. Finally, he insinuated that he would send the pictures to my boss if I didn't answer, so I replied. The exchange was almost the same as the first one, only now he wanted access to my phone to keep an eye on me. I said he could send my pictures to the Pope, but he wasn't getting into my phone. Over the next couple of days, I received strange friend requests on all my social media accounts, and double the amount of phishing scams. But I didn't click on shit. Everyone said it was probably some horny virgin in his mother's basement, that he would get bored and move on to some other poor girl if I just ignored him. So I kept blocking every number until there was no more texts. The very next day, an old car followed me from school all the way to my apartment complex. I should have driven away sooner, but I made a loop and drove back onto the highway. Instead of following me out, the car parked right in front of my building. Unsure what to do, I drove down to a gas station and back again to find that it was gone. Convinced I was being paranoid, I parked and went inside. What were the odds I ran into someone who lived close enough to physically screw with me? It's not like I live in a major city. That night I got dressed for bed around 11, and the second I turned off the light, I got another text message. This time it was a picture of me walking inside earlier. That changed everything. This guy wasn't someone on the other side of the world. I wasn't imagining being followed. This was an actual true crime podcast in the making, and I did not want to play. I went to the police again, and they made an official report with the list of numbers I'd blocked, screenshots of the messages I still had. But there's nothing that they could do yet. Basically, something terrible had to happen before they could really get involved. But that brings me to the final encounter. I was on my way home from work. It was only 8 o'clock, so not exactly late. There's a long stretch of road that's pretty secluded, and people usually like to speed. It's a completely straight 2-lane, so it's really easy to pass if someone's going slow. But I was doing 60 when a pair of headlights came zooming up behind me. I actually braced myself because I thought they were going to rear-end me, but they slammed on their brakes at the last second. Once there was a little space between our cars, they sped up and slammed on the brakes again. I knew it had to be that guy. I wanted to call 911, but I was afraid to look away from the road for even a second. My vision was blurred with tears, but I couldn't pry either of my hands from the wheel. Halfway down the road, the car got behind me and accelerated once more. Only this time, it didn't stop. It smashed into my bumper and almost sent me into the guardrail. It was more luck than anything that I regained control before a collision. I was screaming bloody murder as the car slowed down. I knew that he was getting ready to hit me again, but I didn't know how to avoid the impact. When it came, it was even harder than the first one, and my car was sent spinning. When the world was still again, my vision was filled with blue flashing lights, and the guy's taillights were just visible as they rounded the corner at the end of the road. An officer came to my window while his partner spoke into her radio, but they didn't find the guy. I haven't heard from him since that night, but if those cops hadn't been trying to catch speeders, I don't think that I would have survived that encounter. Don't forget, all of that happened because I decided to fuck around on the dark web. Once. It's like the meth of the internet world. I ordered myself a mystery box off the dark web, originally intended to be filmed as content for a YouTube channel that I was trying to get started back in 2018. Most of the videos capturing these unboxings are staged, satire for clicks with fake half-ass content creators opening boxes and finding murder weapons or human fingers. There's just no reason someone would have to mail that out upon request. Watching these was half the reason I wanted to start my own channel. Seeing the amount of hits they got on some of these videos was deplorable to the actual substance the video contained.
Oh my god, guys, a real note written in a serial killer victim's blood.
Fuck you, no it's not. I thought, if I do a real dark web mystery unboxing, I'd surely get tons more views. So I downloaded a Tor browser and did some research of my own. It was easy to find people selling different kinds of mystery boxes, actually. I found 2 within my price range and placed the order. 6 weeks later, the first mystery box arrives. I spent hours getting the camera and lighting positioned just how I wanted it for the first video. To make the experience as authentic as possible, I went live. I had enough hashtags to fill a book, and it was working because a few people had already gone into my live. Some people were showing up in anticipation for the big reveal. The box I put on the table for all to see was a medium-sized, unsuspecting cardboard box, about as big as a shoebox, but not a shoebox. It opened from the top. My heart was racing as I cut the tape with a small razor blade. I know there were only 5 or 6 other people watching at this moment, but it felt like a million people were waiting to be entertained. Make it or break it time. Whatever was inside this package, I prayed would go viral enough to launch me into YouTube stardom. I turned the box upside down, and the contents fell onto my kitchen table for all to see. What fell out was a black flash drive, a small plastic machine someone in the chat would identify as a card skimmer, and 2 white pieces of paper with 20 different bank card numbers and their adjoining information. After the viewer told me what a skimmer was, I quickly put the pieces together as to what I'd illegally purchased from the dark web, and now I'd put it on display for the whole world to see, my crime of stupidity. I quickly turned off the live stream feed and tried to delete the video from my channel before I had people showing up at my door. Luckily, the couple of people who were watching didn't care enough to report what they'd seen. 2 more weeks would pass before I'd receive the second package. That would be 8 weeks total, waiting for this mystery box to show up. By the time it got there, I'd already kind of forgotten about ordering 2. The first experience must have diminished my anticipation to such a level that I'd completely blocked out how eager I was to get my channel started. It was delivered in the early morning while I was out jogging in the neighborhood. When I got back, it was sitting on my doorstep. The box was a deep maroon. It was about the size of a men's dress shirt box. There was no imagery, no addresses, nothing. I still don't know how the box got on my doorstep without my address being on it or any address. I brought it inside, feeling a sense of resentment, remembering I had impulsively spent money on this mystery box idea. Instead of going directly live this time, I decided to open it up first. If there was anything worth setting the camera up for, I'd just fake it. On the kitchen table, I slowly opened the maroon lid and looked inside. The shallow box is mostly filled with packing peanuts, and they spill all over the floor when I put my hands in to feel around. The mess continued to grow until my fingers ran across a VHS tape. I pulled it out. The maroon box would be empty besides the remaining packing peanuts left inside. I didn't have a VHS player. That meant I'd have to go find one in order to see what was on the video, in order to figure out if I'd had anything for my channel, or if I truly did waste $200. I was up early, and the sun still hadn't risen that morning, so I had to wait hours before a pawn shop opened and I could buy a VHS player. It would be early afternoon before I'd actually get to pop the tape in and watch it. I click the play button, and the screen illuminates a glowing black. Scan lines jitter randomly on the screen, until the first image of the film replaces the black. The quality is poor, and the scan lines still roll up and down, pushing the picture on the screen, but I immediately knew the location being shown on my TV. I'd seen this place before, in small clips the news broadcasted years ago. Grainy security footage of an American high school cafeteria. Then the video would change to another scene of tragedy. Horror films via security cameras, low-resolution cell phone videos and webcams, they all began flashing in front of me in a looping compilation, as if I'm watching them all happen at once. The video lasted under 2 minutes, but to this day, I can recall every disgusting frame on the reel. When the video was over, the tape stopped, and I was truly upset inside. The inhumanity got me to actually cry. When my nerves settled, I was able to think about it in retrospect. What was I expecting to receive from the dark web? If anything, I should have been grateful for my findings. What was on the video was footage easily found on one of those rotten.com websites that were up on the internet in the 90s. If you had an older brother or a friend with an older brother in the late 90s, early 2000s, you were definitely shown the classic Scar Me for Life video clips. The tapes were those, but a whole bunch of different situations. Some I could identify, some I couldn't. All equally as gory and heart-sinking as the one before. But still, more of what I realistically expected when making the purchase. Unfortunately, it was a little too extreme for what I was hoping for, so I broke the tape and tossed it in the garbage. I was never going to watch it again, and I didn't want it sitting around on my movie shelf. And it for sure wasn't getting uploaded online. 2 days later, another maroon box showed up on my doorstep. I'm confused, and again the box is absent of any address or identification of any kind. Inside, it's another VHS tape. As much as I don't want to, I find myself pushing the tape in and pressing play on the machine. Once again, quick scenes of death and carnage skipped around on the screen. I dove over and pressed stop on the player. I ejected the tape and repeated what I did to the first one. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. They were completely different videos from the first tape, all comparatively equal in nausea-inducing point of views. I didn't want to keep receiving mail like this. I got back on the tour and tried to retrace my steps to the vendors I'd bought the mystery boxes from, but they were gone. The names and items changed around by the hour. I'd never be able to find it. I was at a loss as to what to do next besides wait and hope another package didn't show up. The next day, something told me to cut my run short, and as I neared my house, I saw there was another maroon package by the door. I was admittedly terrified beyond belief. This box was shaped smaller than the other two, and when I lifted it, it felt lighter as well. Bringing it inside, I opened it before I even got to the table. Inside the box were 3 Polaroids that perfectly fit within the dimensions of the box, forcing me to turn it 180 degrees to dump them out. With one hand, I turned the box over, and with the other, I caught the 3 photos, and I stared at the first one. Most of the photo was black, except a large, yellow, blurry square. I couldn't make out what it was. I set the box down and flipped to the next Polaroid. This one was further away, still dark and barely visible as to what the photo shows, but the same yellow square sits in the center. The yellow square is smaller this time, but I begin to see that it's the window of a house. The pictures are taken from the outside looking into an illuminated home. The last photo was the most clear, and the one that will haunt me forever. The Polaroid was of me somewhere on one of my morning jogs. I don't know when it was taken. I don't know how it was taken without my knowledge, but it was clearly me, and my hands are on my knees and hunched over, catching my breath. They must have been on my left when they took this picture. I obviously deleted anything that had to do with the Tor browser, and I stopped jogging after that day. I never received another Ramoon package after that. I've always been curious if they stopped delivering because they knew I was staying home. I stayed inside and out of view for over a week until I had to physically go out and get groceries or I'd starve to death. I used up all my sick time and vacation time with that catatonic dread. Honestly, I still feel really lucky that nothing worse happened. But I guess this would just be my warning to anyone who's thinking about using the dark web. Just don't.